Hey everybody, it's Carm here, and actually a new addition. Say hello to Mina slash Raven, or Raven slash Mina. Just adopted her about a week ago, a little over a week ago. She came with two names, first Mina, then Raven, so I combine them and I call her Mina Raves. But she's our newest addition here, and yeah, getting acclimated and still working her slowly in with the director, who's I don't know if he's really liking this at the moment, but we're getting there. But yeah, I wasn't expecting to do two of these kinds of videos in a row, but as many of you know, we lost another great giant of music a few days ago, and really my all-time favorite. Klaus Schulze was among my favorites, and I believe will always be, but Vangelis, I believe Vangelis is the proper pronunciation, but for 32 years I've been mispronouncing it, and like I'll always have that habit. But yeah, he's just yeah, he left us recently, and I don't know, it's almost really like losing a friend, an old friend, which I think at least some of you, many of you, understand how that is, even though you've never met them. You know, the only contact was through the speakers of your stereo or headphones, and maybe photos on albums. But ever since hearing his music at the age of 14, being introduced to him via Blade Runner, watching that, it just had such a profound effect on me, and really rippled through and extended beyond to all the music I got into ever since then, and even other forms of art. My perception of other forms of art, and even in a lot of ways nature itself, really came through and from his music. It was so intensely personal, just the way it struck me, that feeling that the music is being made just for you. And when you're 14 years old and you're painfully shy and very inwardly drawn by nature, finding something at that point that just makes that instant connection is just, yeah, there's nothing, really no words that it could, you really describe it with. But yeah, and just want to show a few things here. For being as much of a fan as I've been over these years, I can't believe I don't have everything together like I should, his own section. It's scattered in other listening piles over time. But the first thing I listened to upon hearing of his passing was probably hard to pick a favorite album, but this is one that's deeply resonated with me in all those ways that I make the deepest emotional connection with. It's Opera Sauvage, 1979. One of the earliest albums I picked up of his on cassette in the middle of summer of 1990. Songs like Reeve or Reve, La Effant in Ireland are among favorites. And yeah, I mean, this was really needed to get those feelings out, and definitely shed some tears, and this helped to accelerate it, if you know this album. But it's also a joyous, celebratory as well. As I've told people who know me well, I'm really like a melancholy optimist. A combination of joy and melancholy, kind of in equal measure. And this album really, brings that out, symbolizes that for me, and yeah, it's extremely powerful. So, but what I really used as this kind of a centerpiece here is an album, something I've shown many times over the years, and still one of the greatest gifts I've ever received in my life, of any kind. Just the gesture alone, the idea of this, of giving, of getting this as a gift would be enough. But Vangelis Delectus, the Polydor and Vertigo recordings, 1973-1985. Gifted to me 5 years ago, could be to the day, by dear old friend Shannon, who many of you know from her own videos. And Shannon, if you're watching, I have to thank you for the 147th time. So just an incredible gift that I keep returning to. And yeah, it's 13 albums from these years. And another thing too is, in the days following Klaus's passing, I found myself, along with listening to his music and revisiting those, I was thinking a lot about him, about Vangelis. For whatever reason, I don't know if there was something, premonition of some kind, but I just kept thinking about him and started playing some of his music as well alongside Klaus. I don't know if maybe I was bracing myself, given that we are losing so many artists of these generations, and you know, more and more it seems every day you hear about someone else. But, yeah, there was just something there as well. There's 1 through 6. And I love this. It's the coolest guy. All the CDs here. The missing one is a very early album called L'Apocalypse de Anima for a soundtrack, a wildlife soundtrack. I have that playing very lightly. I have one of the longest cut on there from playing on repeat. Just very quietly. And the second one here, discs 7 through 13. My own introduction to him, again, was through Blade Runner. I'd done a video on Genesis Live. Actually, it was mentioning Shannon again, a response to her own video on that. And I told a story of a fellow named Neil. I call him Uncle Neil, old family friend, who he had a cabin up in Michigan, and it was just, you know, we went up there one weekend. He introduced me to Genesis Live, Holst the Planets, and Blade Runner, all in one weekend. And again, at the age of 14, with everything else, hearing all of that, experiencing all of that at once was just, you know, I just can't find the words for it. But this was, you know, that's what started me on this particular path. Yeah, just incredible photos in here. And I remember even getting a lot of these early on, you know, where I was and the circumstances. Many of them were early on in high school. Became kind of like my my ritual. If I had enough money on a Friday, since the plaza, shopping plaza was right behind the high school, Coconuts was there, the music store, and I'd go in there and I'd buy another Vangelis tape and get another blank tape for Musical Starstreams. This is for Earth, 1973. An album which I didn't get to until many years later, and didn't quite get it at first until years even after that. But now it's become one of among my favorites. A mixture of many different styles, but a little different from what he did further on in the 70s, but still. I think it's part of the mark of a visionary, you know, is that the rest of us, you know, have to catch up with them. Here in his element. Very early on, early 70s. His natural habitat. Yeah, this is the one that's playing right now. It's another one that's among my favorites, especially of the earliest. Yeah, Création du Monde, 10-minute piece. I have that on repeat right now. There's just so much one could say, and the words are really failing me. You know, to convey what his music has meant to me over the years, and again how it just led to so many other styles of music that maybe I wouldn't have been, if I would have gotten around to them, it would have been in a different way, but it may have been more difficult, since he approached music in so many different ways and was really, I'd say, an instant composer or instant creator, being that he didn't, as far as I know, he didn't read or write conventional music, notation. He really did play everything in the moment, just as it flowed through him. It was instant. So I think that that really laid the foundation for being open to so many other things. Kind of really captures his spirit there. He was jovial, but also intense with everything. Here's China. This is the very first album I bought of his on cassette. I remember it was June of 1990, right after getting out of 8th grade. And I was looking for his albums after seeing Blade Runner. I couldn't get there fast enough to try to look for his music. And I was too shy to ask the clerk, where I would find his music. So I went to every section, wasn't finding him in rock or classical or anywhere. So I eventually found him in easy listening. And there was about maybe a dozen of his tapes. And he was sandwiched in between Gino Vanelli and Roger Whittaker. And I had no idea who they were at the time. So I probably wondered if they sounded anything like him, rather than the other way around. It's among my favorite photos of him. This is from the Direct album. Another one of my personal favorites. If I had to name a half a dozen favorites, that would be in there. It's from about 1987, 88. Another one that really captures his essence in a lot of ways. I really like this there with the kids and offering him a snack there. I think that's something too about him, that in some ways the music was futuristic and progressive, but I think he really harked back to an earlier time when, things like music and other forms of art, science, religion, all of these things seemed to have less of a boundary between them, and it was all about exploring, the inner and outer world. Just the very idea of satisfying one's curiosity to see how things worked internally and externally. It seemed like his music conveys that, not just in its sound and the images that he evokes, but just the very way he creates it. And he seemed to represent that as a person, as far as I can tell. So, Opera Sauvage again. Just so beautiful and deep. There's a very early picture of him here. Also with Aphrodite's Child, with the Demi Roussos, an incredible album, 666. And I think Formix was an early band he was in. There he's with his brother, Nico, I believe. Yeah, Nico Papathanasiou. I believe his full name was Evangelos Odysseus Papathanasiou. So you can kind of understand why he went by just the one name for all these years. He's there with John Anderson, who played harp on Opera Sauvage. And of course they made albums together. He started on Heaven and Hell, his early solo album. John sang on a song called So Far, So Clear. So Far Again, So Clear. See You Later. This is very interesting blend of different styles and approaches. Something else too, that he, even if there were albums that somewhat sounded similar, whatever followed after maybe 2 or 3 would be completely different and unexpected. he was always challenging himself to do something new, and just whatever he really felt internally, it came through. Found a way to make electronic music really breathe. Made the synthesizers breathe, I felt. You talk about, organic versus synthetic. I don't think there was a border there for him. Maybe showing it as all being one thing. And again, to be introduced to him, to this kind of music in general through him, who really emphasized and represented that so well. That meant the world, Of course, what he maybe best known for, Chariots of Fire. A film, I have to be honest, I still have yet to see all the way through. Only really know it for the music. But of course, as distinctive and as anything else, to the point where I wonder how many people have heard the tune and didn't know the source, or if they've gone beyond that. Yeah, I hadn't realized till I received this how much he had been photographed over the years. So I think it was about 6 or 7 albums that I collected before I even knew what he looked like. Someone who had been known as being quite private. He really was. I think he was open through his music. That's where you kind of found who he was in so many ways, who he seemed to be. Is another favorite, Antarctica 1983 soundtrack. Also, it seemed, whether it was a soundtrack or something, either way, it was so evocative, and even beyond cinematic, it always evoked something. Even if you never had seen a frame of a film that he had scored, it somehow you could find your own, create your own film. It's another one from the direct sessions in the late 80s. Yeah, besides keyboards and synthesizers, playing drums, percussion, all kinds of things. It's from the Antarctica sessions. Yeah, when I first seen a picture of him, I think it was from direct. The thing that struck me was that he looked a lot like my dad looked like at the time, and it had a similar look. Soil Festivities was actually playing this overnight on repeat, and we had a storm, and it blended in really nicely at low volume. You couldn't tell exactly the source of the rain, but it was just perfect. This one's from 1984. More pictures from that album. Just a few more here. Mask, 1985. I think this one was the second album I bought by him. The font on the cassettes, the Polydor cassettes, looked very similar, and this looked very much like China. You could hear similarities, but it's actually quite different, more symphonic and choral sounding. Actually, mentioning China again, that seemed to be the closest album to the Blade Runner soundtrack, it seemed at that time, as far as the tone and feel of it. The choir here. I believe this is for Heaven and Hell, London's Royal Albert Hall. Invisible Connections. just, I think I have it here. I was just playing, yeah, the cassette a little earlier. Probably his most minimal album that I'm aware of. The silences are almost often longer than the sounds themselves. In performance, he didn't do very many live public performances. I love that. He had pointed out, the preparation needed for that was just so great. He would really want to get it as perfect as possible in a way. And he was such an instant performer. He'd rather just play something, not have to really prepare for it too much. Central command control here. Looks like those are from the direct section, from direct. All short stories, getting into the John and Vangelis albums. And to be honest, those are albums it took me a while to warm up to, because I was always kind of more instrumentally inclined from then onwards. But I came to like them more and more over time. So Long Ago, So Clear. That's the title of the song from Heaven and Hell. The first time they really collaborated, playing together. Friends of Mr. Cairo. It's one I like a lot. Yeah, I'll Find My Way Home. That was a real big single for them. Derek had done a wonderful video himself just yesterday, and it pointed it out that it was something that, even though Vangelis' music did become popular and commercial in a sense, he never really sought that. He just played what he played, and I think he's an example of that kind of an artist, a fairly rare example of that kind of an artist who really broke through with that kind of music, and of course did it in such, did it very much on his own terms. Even playing, whether it was collaborating with others or alone most of the time, always had that integrity to everything he did. I've ever shown this whole book before in a video, just parts of it. Yeah, just incredible going through these. This last thing I'll show is his most recent album and final one in his lifetime, Juno to Jupiter. An example that really brought me back to the early days of getting into music, collecting, going into shops. I had no idea this was out. It came out in late 2020 or early 21. Late last year, just wandering into a shop, hadn't been there in a long time, and yeah, this was there, and it just brought me back 25 or 30 years when that was more common. When your favorite artist, you just have to happen across the album to know it was there. And most recently, something else that really great interest and passion of his. So exploration in general, of course, but space exploration. It even themed on albums going back to Albedo 0.39. And this is a fantastic album. Just played it earlier on this morning. Really, I'd say it's a culmination in a lot of ways. A summation of all of his music. Really since the mid-70s. You hear a little bit of everything in here. It's modern, but you could also hear little references, little playful references really to what he had been doing over the previous 40 some years. It's very much here. And for a final album in his lifetime, it's fitting, whether he knew it consciously or not. See, it's a great, send off, or as I've heard the statement, departing for the stars. This is it. So yeah, again, so much one could say, and it's probably gone on for quite a while, but of course I had to come on and say something, and it's just, he's been that important to me, and I'm sure, again, to many of you who understand this. Something Derek had said that really hit home for me too was that his music and example really set the tone for many lives, and he definitely did for mine, from hearing him from that time on. And yeah, it still will. I'll still be enjoying it if I'm here in another 32 years, beyond. It's just yeah. So if you have any Vangelis, by all means, yeah, or explore it further, because it keeps revealing new things. So rest in peace, Vangelis. Thank you for everything you've done, and yeah. So yeah, Vangelis, in 1943 to 2022. Well, thank you all for watching, and until the next one, peace, love, and joy.